Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me at this Content Strategy Collective talk all about building a pillar page with MarketMuse. My name is Zoe Hawkins. I am the Content Marketing Manager at a company called dgraph Labs. And let's just jump right in. You'll probably hear my little clicks because I love a mechanical keyboard. Just, totally at me after this if you're also a mechanical keyboard fan. Okay, so what we're going to talk about, we're going to go through the what and the why of pillar pages super briefly. I'm going to assume that most of you have a sense of what a pillar page is and why you need it, but just in case, I want to make sure we're all on the same page about the value of a pillar page and kind of the what and why of why you should do it, how to go about doing it, all the rest. I'm also going to take you through building the actual MarketMuse brief, which will be used to build the pillar page. It is a core piece of construction material, as well as optimizing the process and writing with both internal or external writers. Okay, let's dive right in. So, what is a pillar page? If this is your first time writing a pillar page, if you've read a couple articles about what is a pillar page, or if you're totally new, don't worry. The concept of a pillar page is basically that this is your ultimate guide. This is something where you are expecting to be the expert on a core topic or a core element of your business. So for example, in a previous role that I worked at, we were in banking and payments, but in the cannabis space. And so there I wrote about, the ultimate guide to banking, the ultimate guide to payments as a merchant, and the ultimate guide for consumers. Now at dgraph, we are a graph database that also uses GraphQL. One of our core use cases is knowledge graphs. So I've written pillar pages about graph databases, about GraphQL, and about knowledge graphs. So those are kind of fundamental to the business and what we do. And these are ultimate guides. So you can start knowing nothing about a graph database, and hopefully by the time you finish reading our graph database pillar page, you have a pretty firm understanding of what it is, what it's for, how to use it, all the rest. And this makes it really central for all your keywords. So for example, you might have graph database, would have a lot of different elements to it. You would have what is a graph database, how data is stored in a graph database, who uses a graph database use cases, all different sorts of keywords that you want to be ranking for. They all converge on this pillar page and then also spider out from this pillar page. It's kind of your one-stop shop for all of your keyword building. So this means that it's really important for internal linking. So if you have your graph database pillar page, you would want it to link to any blogs that you wrote about, like what is a graph, what is a graph, what is a graph database, down to even like, your case studies or, more bottom of the funnel sort of content, all can link together through this internal linking structure focused on your pillar page, as well as external link building. Now, this is going to be your ultimate guide. This is like your best piece of content on a specific topic, which hopefully should make it really interesting for other people to link to. So let's say someone else is writing a blog or has a YouTube channel or a podcast or something like that where they touch on this topic, maybe tangentially or fully. You can send them this pillar page and be like, hey, here's a resource. Hope it helps. Feel free to link to it. And this can be part of your external link building process. So this is just some of what a pillar page is. Now, you might be wondering in your circumstance, which pillars should I build? This is like architecture, what pillars do I need? What load-bearing walls do I need? So this is particularly complicated in a startup. I feel like startups, they should just put us like in a revolving door or something. We're constantly pivoting. But even if you're in a more established business, what are the core keywords that you're trying to rank for? Even as you pivot, even as you grow, what is fundamental to who you are and what you do? So at dgraph, we are never going to stop being a graph database. We need to be ranking for all things graph database. So that's why in this talk, I'm going to be taking you through how I built, but with some writers, our graph database pillar page. In your business, it might be more focused on eco-conscious retail, or it could be focused on, cannabis payments, as I've done before. And this is really your main keyword that you need to rank for and the foundation of the rest of your business. Now, One of the things that I grapple with, that I think a lot of people grapple with, is like, what is the difference between a blog or a pillar page? And this is really going to vary depending on how your website is organized and how your content is structured across your site. As far as Google is concerned, I don't think they care. As long as there's a core URL that you are ranking for that has, the good URL structure with the keyword in the URL, it doesn't really matter too much whether you put this in your blog or as a standalone landing page or something on your website. I have an amazing designer at my company. Shout out Marissa. She makes me look amazing. I'll show you at the end. And so she built these pillar pages to look absolutely incredible. So that was really beneficial for me to be able to have these as standalone pillar pages on the site. But I've also worked in contexts where all of this sort of stuff had to be in the blog, and it works just as well. So don't worry too much about whether you shove this into your blog or you make this a pillar page on your site. It's really up to you. It's up to the design ethos of your website, as well as kind of, as you argue for the value of this, this might end up becoming a key part of your homepage or landing page or even top nav. So the pillar page can serve a lot of different uses. So don't get too stuck in whether it's a blog or a pillar page, like just dive in. The only thing I will say is that a blog obviously should be a bit more personal, have a bit more personal anecdotes, have the voice of the writer, whereas a pillar page, in my opinion, should be a bit more branded, a bit more, I guess, corporate speak, not really specific to any writer or even allocated to a specific author. But again, that's up to you. Your pillar page could just be a really amazing ultimate guide blog from your founder or CEO, if that works best for your business. Okay, we're going to dive right in. I know this is like a tiny screen, so I apologize, but this is the screen you'll see when you order the brief. So you can input a keyword, and if you already have the URL, you can plug that in too. But if it's a totally new page, you can leave that blank. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to go into using plans in MarketMuse, but if you are using them, or if, like me, their names just entertain you, you can feel free to add that in there. Then it's got the little checkbox for, you want to order a brief. And if you also wanted to let the AI write your first draft, which is like a really cool new feature from MarketMuse that I haven't fully explored, so we're not doing that today. You can check that box as well. And then you just click finish, and let's get started. So here you'll create the various sections or, chunks of text of your pillar page. So this pops up as you're at basically the very next page. Once you order your brief, you've put in your keyword, and you can plug in your H2s that you would like. And to make it even more interesting, what's really nice is on the right-hand side of the screen, MarketMuse has discovered a whole bunch of topics and questions that could be relevant to your pillar page. So the way that I do this is I put in the H2 or the main subheading topic that follows sort of I have a background in journalism, so it's always going to be what is it? Where is it? How is it? Why is it? All of those kinds of things. So we'll have a section of like, what is a graph database? But then once I've put that in as the H2, I can go look in the questions and the topics and find relevant questions that could be answered that also clarify things a little bit. So what is a graph database might send one person to talk about database structures. It might send someone else to talk about what is a graph. So we would want to put in, for what is a graph database? And then they give you a few different options or versions of how that could be phrased. You could also have, examples of, does LinkedIn use a graph database? All of these could be relevant for your audience or helpful in terms of putting things into a context. So you just drag and drop these in underneath each section to build out your subtopics within your pillar page. So here, what I find is that adding these questions in doesn't just help clarify each section for the reader when they're reading through it, but also for the writer. So you can see here, I put in, what do you mean by graph database? Is NoSQL a graph database? How does it work? Where is the data stored? How do graphs store data? These types of questions that, might seem really basic or really obvious, but if I give a writer the subtask topic, say, give them the subheading and say, this is the piece of copy where you're going to write, what is a graph database? That could be really confusing for the writer. They might not even know how far you want them to cover. Do they start talking about use cases? Do they start talking about how to use it? So this can really keep them focused, and also, give a sense of exactly what should be covered in each subtopic. Okay, so you've put together all of your chunks. So you do this like throughout. So you do, what is a graph database? Who needs a graph database use cases, which is the best graph database, how to choose a graph database. You can have all sorts of different subtopics and just slot in any of the recommended questions or topics that MarketMuse has already found for you. And then you click submit and you get to see this screen. Thank you for submitting. And then you have to wait a little bit. It doesn't really take 15 minutes, at least in my experience, but they do warn you it can take 15 minutes. So this is when you go, refill your water bottle, make a fresh cup of coffee, or attend to all the million Slack messages and emails that have come in like the 5 seconds that you were doing something else. So this is when you go and do that. And then you come back. And you'll see that this is what they show at the front of the brief. I don't really find this to be it's helpful, but this isn't the part that I dive into. So you now need to go in and finalize or clarify your brief. So you'll come in here, and this will be where you kind of articulate exactly which topics to mention, the frequency to mention them. So the AI has done all the hard work for you. You just click on those little icons next to each word to say yes, this is relevant. No, this is not. So for example, this would be if any of your competitors pop up, you don't need to tell your writers to write about them. So you would just exclude that. So what I really like is the aspect of the frequency and the relevancy. So this helps a writer understand, obviously, the relevance of the various elements to touch on, and also how much attention to give them. So I've had it before, I'm sure we all have, where you give a topic to a writer, or you yourself start writing on a topic, and you kind of oh, I want to include this keyword, and you spend way too much time going down that rabbit hole. So this really keeps it to be okay, you only need to mention this word once, this word 3 times, this word 10 times, and it puts it into a kind of framework that's a lot easier to follow and ensures that you're both comprehensive but also super focused and on topic. What's also really nice, so I talked earlier when I was explaining the value of a pillar page is for internal linking, as well as external links as well. So what's really nice here is MarketMuse pulls your entire inventory, your site inventory, and pulls some example anchor text that you could use, as well as the links. So you might already know most of the links on your site. If you've built most of your site, if you've written most of the copy, you probably know which links you would want to link to for a relevant subtopic. But you might not know all of them, or you might be relatively new and not know the entire back catalog of blogs that could be relevant. So this is where you can scroll through. You can see a whole bunch of different options. Make sure you click see more. There's it'll only show you 1 or 2 links by default, but you can scroll through and find a ton of relevant links for each subtopic. So this is just a really good way that you make sure you don't forget certain links, or if you want to have different options, maybe you keep linking to the same blog about graph analytics and you're no, I want to link to a community post about it. That might make your writing more engaging to be this was a question asked by one of our users and this is the community answer that they got. It can just make the writing more engaging or a little different within your pillar page. So all different options for links that you can use, and MarketMuse also pulls up external links. So if you're looking for a third-party source on a topic, or you want to kind of link back to a partner or another resource, it automatically generates some of those that can be really useful, or you can slot your own links in there as well. So for example, if I'm talking about graph analytics, I might want to link to one of our partners that does graph analytics, and that could be a really nice way of just putting that URL in so that I don't have to remember it, and the external writer already knows that that's a link that they should consider using. Okay, so you now have a brief in MarketMuse. You finalized it. That I didn't show the button to click, but basically after you've finalized all of your links and exactly the subtopics and all of that and the keywords, you will click say yes, I'm happy with it, and it will finalize the brief. So now you need to find someone to actually do the writing. I think this is something that as content marketing managers, we sometimes get hung up on of am I writing it? Is it someone else? Is it a subject matter expert? Is it a freelancer? So I just wanted to kind of take a moment to dive into this a little bit in terms of what to consider when you think about who's writing a piece of content. So it might be, the first thing to always consider is, do you have the time, knowledge, and inclination to write this? So I'm a firm believer that anyone can learn anything they need to know. So I have written content in the last few months about topics that, 6 months ago I knew nothing about, but I have immersed myself in them, and I'm now more than capable to write a knowledge graph pillar page, for example. But at the same time, I don't always have time to do it. I have reporting to do up to the board, or I have to work on slides with the marketing director, or I have, 10 other blogs that are fighting for my attention for edits. So you really need to think about, do you have the time? Do you have the knowledge? And do you have the inclination? Is this going to be the best use of you as a resource? So, okay, let's say you're not the writer. Do you need a subject matter expert? And there are a lot of different elements to consider when using a subject matter expert, especially if they're in-house. So they, again, have the workload issue. Do they have the time or inclination to write this particular pillar page? Are they the best writer for this task? Are they a good writer? I mean, how much time are they going to spend writing it, and how much time are you going to spend editing it? So keep that in mind as well. Sometimes it's easier to have someone else write it and then use your subject matter expert as an editor rather than, an initial writer. So then comes the question of, can a freelancer or external writer do this? What's really nice with the brief is it makes it that pretty much anyone can follow it. It's kind of a blueprint. So if you have someone who is a solid writer, they should be able to pull up, all the information that they need and craft a really solid pillar page using the brief and using just their superior writing skills to put something together for you. And again, this can feed into that cycle of, you might use a freelancer to write it and then have a subject matter expert who edits it for the technical elements, and then you would dive in to do some of the copy edits. And I just want to also pause for a minute to talk about the brief. So when the person initially opens the brief, they see that outline page or the overview page, and you really want them to dive into the outline, because that's where it's going to show them, okay, you're going to write about this subtopic. Here's your H2. Here's your subheading. Here are the questions you're going to answer. Here are the topics you're going to cover and how many times you're going to use these words if possible. But also what I always tell any writer is that this is an outline. This is a blueprint. I guess those are very different things, an outline and a blueprint. Blueprints have to be followed exactly, otherwise your building falls down. This is more of an outline or a rough idea for someone to be like, okay, this is what goes here, this is what goes there, and a bit of an organization and guidance. It doesn't need to be followed to a T. So I, tell people we want to avoid keyword stuffing. We want to avoid awkward writing. The goal is to make a really helpful, useful, well-written pillar page. Don't worry too much, at least in the initial writing stage, about, how many times you used this word or that word. So dive in, get the writing done. Okay. So I also let my writers write wherever they prefer. So when I was doing this pillar page project, our GraphQL pillar page came back in Notion. Our GraphDB pillar page came back in a Google Doc. I don't care. Write where you want, where you're happy, and then I will fix it as the content marketing manager. It's part of my job, so that's fine. So now, what do I do when I get this copy back? So what I did was take everything from the Google Doc and shove it into MarketMuse. So they have this optimization element within the brief. So you have like a saved writing section that you can just drag and drop stuff into, copy paste it in, and it is magic. I love optimizing with MarketMuse. So you put in all your copy, and I don't even need to read this to see exactly which keywords have been used. So it gives me the count. You can see on the right-hand side, it gives me what was suggested, how many we used, all of that. And at the very top, it gives you the content score and also shows you the target that you were going for and the average of other people who are ranking for this term. So if you imagine a world where everyone is writing about graph databases, which would be a very bizarre world, but that's fine. The target that we would want to hit in order to rank and outrank everyone else would have been a score of 30. We got a content score of 41, which is amazing. Now, what's really cool, so not only does it highlight the words that are the keywords in the copy, but you can see on the right immediately what could be done to improve the score. So I don't even need to read the whole copy to see that graph analytics as a keyword is missing. Now, of course, you don't need to use all the keywords. I really want to stress this. Like, you do not need to hit every single element of that. But as you edit, it's really gratifying to see your content score goes up. So, I'll get a piece of content, I'll run it through Optimize, and I might have a target score of 20 and it's at 11. And I can literally go through and find the missing keywords and update and optimize it. It also helps because with this right-hand knowledge graph that you can see, with the frequency suggested and the ones that are missing, it just, pops right out at you. You can see like, oh, these are in red, and go back to the original writer and say, hey, any way that you can weave this in? Or you yourself as editor can just read through the copy and be like, oh, I'm going to change this use of the word analytics to graph analytics. Make sure the technical writer says I haven't completely butchered all meaning in there. And you have a finalized version of the copy with a way higher content score. So this is how I go through. I put everything through Optimizely. This was a suggestion that our MarketMuse, my amazing MarketMuse lady, Katie, who I adore, she suggested. She said, anything on your website should go through Optimize. And I was like, well, okay, let's try it. And it's just so easy to use, and it's like magic. And what I really love about it as well is it kind of reminds me of when I'm so sorry if no one else had this in school, but when I was in elementary school, they would give you a spelling test each week, and you would get your list of words. And then you would have to take those words, and usually there was some assignment of like, make a story with at least 5 words or something, use them in a sentence, essentially. And this to me is like that, but for grownups. Like, it's a fun puzzle to be like, how can I fit this keyword in? Ooh, can I fit that one in? And immediately see, oh, this is what I'm missing, and this is what I need to add, and how can I do this? And you can just play around with the words right in this tool to get it exactly where you want it to be, so that by the time it's published on your site, it has the best chance of ranking. I do want to pause and just show that, it doesn't have to just look like massive blocks of texts. Once you've written your pillar page, you're going to want to break it out into something that's really appealing. Let your designer make you look good. I always say that our designer makes my words look 1,000,000 times better. So this is your opportunity to hand off all of your precious writing and let them format it in a way that's really digestible, really easy to follow, click around in, engaging, because you want it to be. You want this to be your ultimate guide. You want this to be your best piece of content that's going to both rank for SEO, be appealing for internal links and backlinks, and also really drive the messaging home. This is your core piece of content that you're building the rest of your business upon. This is where you share what makes you special, why you should be a key part of this industry. So, you don't want it to be too salesy. You want it to be an ultimate guide. You want it to be accessible to everyone, but you also want to make sure that, you feature your own company and that you say what you do that's special or different. So that's where you kind of end up with building a pillar page. I do want to show you a little bit about what that can look like in terms of success. Now, I fully need to optimize our graph database pillar page. It was a bit of a scramble in April to get it launched. We were launching it alongside an event and a product update. So it was a lot of moving pieces, and our developer, I think, was ready to kill me by the end of it. So I need to get in there. I need to put in, some better links. I need to, tweak a bit of the copy still. I want to add many more entrances to the pillar page from other pieces, other parts of our website. So there's still a lot that I want to do, but you can already see the traffic just, 0 to 100 kind of situation. We're experiencing some really good growth on it. And the thing to keep in mind as well with any new piece of content on your site is that Google takes a while before it starts rewarding you from an SEO perspective. So in general, what I've seen is that within a couple weeks, you can start seeing some improvement, but really, around the 3-month, 6-month mark is when things just exponentially grow. So don't get discouraged if you're only seeing moderate growth in the beginning. Keep making your tweaks, keep making your optimizations, but really keep in mind that these things do take time. They just do. Google is not an instant gratification situation. You build your pillar page, you make it as good as it can be, the best version of a pillar page that it can be. And then, you ship it out into the world and you let Google start crawling it and figuring out where it ranks and boosting it and finding more and more topics that are relevant for it. So be patient. Don't get discouraged if it's not an instant exponential growth, but you can see here that already just using really high quality, really comprehensive content that covers a wide range of keywords can help you rank for, a decent amount of traffic right off the bat. So that's really exciting and, more to come. Okay, so now hopefully, having listened to this super quick talk all about pillar pages and using MarketMuse to build your brief, you have an understanding of what a pillar page is and why you would use it. You understand how to walk through the different steps of the MarketMuse brief building process to build your ultimate pillar page, as well as how to work with a writer, whether it's yourself or a subject matter expert or a freelancer. No matter how you're doing it, the outline makes a world of difference and really keeps you focused and as well as comprehensive. And then you optimize the copy, get the first draft out there and then, spend some time tweaking it in the optimize tool. And then let your designer make you look good and reap the sweet, sweet SEO rewards. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to my words and hear what I've got to share with you. Feel free to drop me a note. I pretty much live on Twitter and LinkedIn. So I've put my Moonstormer handle. This is what happens when you pick a handle as a teenager and never change it. So follow me as @Moonstormer on Twitter, or even if you search Moonstormer on LinkedIn, I think I pop up. But give me a shout if you found this helpful. If you didn't find it helpful, also give me a shout. Let me know what I could have done to impart better wisdom going forward. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the Content Strategy Collective conference. It's really exciting. I know I'm looking forward to a bunch of different talks. So join me in chats, join me on social media, and I hope to hear from you. Enjoy the rest of the event. Bye.